everyone. Welcome to episode 11of Ask Yaritza. Today, I have a special guest with me, Dr. Basil Marín. He's an educator. He's a high school assistant principal. He's a mentor. And get this is my favorite part. He's a disruptor of the status quo. Dr. Marín, how are you?
I'm doing well, my sister. How are you doing?
I'm great. I can't complain.
Yes. It's so awesome to be here and to be with you in this space.
Oh, I love it. Is there anything that you would like to share with our audience before we begin?
Absolutely. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to be on here in your show. Yes, I am, national speaker, consultant. I am currently right now the ASCD president. And so I do a lot of work with ASCD and helping educators across the nation to do what's best for kids. But as Yaritza said, the most important thing you should know about me is I am a disruptor of the status quo and making sure that we truly are getting the soil right for the plants, some seeds that we need to have for our kids to have a truly equitable education.
Oh, I love it. So what folks don't know is, yes, I met Dr. Marín on Twitter, but at one point we actually sat through, I want to call it like a conversation or a panel discussion. And I'm going to say underground, right? Because no one else really knew about it. Right. And what I loved about this conversation was it was almost like enough is enough. Let's stop talking about what we're going to do for kids and actually do it. And that's exactly what just drew me to you. And it's kind of what our viewer question is for today. So I think this is a perfect time for us to dig in. Yeah. So our viewer question for today is, how can culturally responsive teaching be used to build relationships during remote learning?
Wow, that's a huge question, right? And that's the question that should really be at the heart and focus of every school division, right? How can culturally responsive teaching? So just what that means to me is really making sure that our curriculums are meeting our kids, right? And a lot of times when I speak across the nation, people will tell me like, well, I don't look like our kids, right? Well, I'm here to tell you 80% of the teaching force doesn't look like our kids. But what I will tell you is we're all able to make an impact, no matter our level, our role, as long as we care about kids, right? And we want kids to be successful. They can feel that. Kids are genuine. They can feel you truly care about them, or if you're just saying that because you're paid to say that, right? And so for our kids, we talk about culturally responsive teaching in terms of the curriculum, making sure that we're finding a space for everyone to be inclusive in the conversation, right? Whether it is sexual orientation, whether it is gender, whether it is ethnicity, like having those conversations and saying, you have a place and this is a safe place for you. But I'll be honest with you, Yaritza, I truly feel that, education, it's a place that we have to disrupt because it's not a system made for historically marginalized kids, right? And so that's the problem, is that there's so many hurdles and things we have to get over and jump through to even feel welcome and to feel like it's a space where we can come and learn. And so what is our role in disrupting that and making sure that all kids have what they need, no matter where you are in the nation?
Oh, I'm already like, yes, come on. And, if anyone has followed, this series thus far or has followed me on Twitter, they know that I am like the biggest advocate for building relationships. And the reason for it is because if you take away the academic aspect, if you take away what people say is, academic achievement, what do you have left? You just have left that student, that human being that honestly just wants to feel included. And so I'm so glad that you mentioned, having an inclusive environment, disrupting education. It has to be disrupted because it is flawed. It is a system that has been built with so much inequities, especially when we think about sex orientation, especially when we think about race, especially now in 2020, when we think about how the curriculum is designed by people who don't look like us. Right. And so what I wanted to get deeper into was, these are the holidays, and I've been teaching for 11 years, and I know for sure every single time we hit the holidays is when my students act up. And it's not because they're not understanding the content. It's not because I was late to work. Yeah. It's because it's the holidays, and they're constantly being reminded that they don't have certain things that teachers are now putting in their backgrounds, like Christmas trees, right? Yeah. Or the little elf on a shelf. And even with that, I'm like, this is not culturally responsive. Right. I wasn't raised, with elves.
Right.
I didn't know about elves growing up. And so
Right.
I had to step back and think about everything that's going on now in education, just to say that we've done it and to say that it's fun, but my students haven't been exposed to it just as much as I haven't been exposed to it.
That's right. So that's so deep that you say that. So definitely those 2 times of a year, like you said, holiday time and then that spring fever, right? When kids start to just kind of gear up towards. And so part of it is just the excitement for the holidays coming up, but some of it also is now the structure that I had. That you have to really truly understand your right. So that for some kids, you are the best thing of their day. If you're truly educating them, I feel safe in your classroom. You hold me accountable. I know when you truly want the best for me, and so that might be my place. My household has so much going on that when I come to school, I can just be me and relax for a second, and I don't have to be a kid that's 12 or 13-year-old, and I have parent responsibilities at the house. Right, I can come to school and just be a kid. And so for me, when you think about the holidays, depending on where you are, that's a 2-week of time where I have to endure what I go through every day for 2 weeks straight, right? And I lose my consistency. I lose the people who care about me. I lose some of those things. And not saying every household is bad, but for our kids who are truly struggling, it's hard to come and go into that environment. So then it's really an environment where the kids are now, it's like a wild puppy, and then you got to come back into the environment in January and to kind of recalibrate. But for kids, how do we make sure that they have what they need? And so one of the things that I'll say is that I talk a lot about reaching the unreachable student, right? And even that word reach, let me break it down really quick, is the R's relationship. It comes back to relationships, right? Like if you don't even like kids, you shouldn't be a teacher. You shouldn't be an administrator. You shouldn't be a superintendent. Like that's as simple as that. Relationships are everything. And we're in the business of people, right? The E stands for efficacy. A lot of times these students who are struggling don't feel they can do it, right? They haven't shown the academic support. They get in IEP meetings or getting meetings where they're told all the time they can't do something. So they start to have a deficient mindset about it. And then you have kids too who say, someone at the school is saying, oh my gosh, you can graduate high school. You could be the first one in your family to graduate college. And then you go home and then mom, grandma, auntie, whoever, dad is telling you, you're not going to be the first one to go to college in this family. Why are they pumping your head with all that, right? So that efficacy piece is so huge. The A stands for attitude. A lot of kids, I say, have that hermit crab mentality where I want to push you away and I want to give you attitude because guess what? I want to get close to you. I want to be in your space. I want to, you value me and I want to be a part of that. But guess what? If I get close to you, you might leave me like everybody else. So I don't want to deal with that. So so it's a double-edged sword. I'm just going to push you away. And then I'll say C is being a champion for kid. I love Dr. Rita Pearson's, philosophy of every child deserves a champion. And I've had so many champions in my life that have helped me. If you've truly had time to go into my story on this show, you understand that I was a second grader kid reading on the kindergarten reading level. You'd understand that I was a kid that was alternative school kid myself. You'd understand that I could care less about teachers because my dad was a pastor and I was supposed to be perfect. But, PKs can be the worst, they say, right? And so I was that poster child. But for me to be who I am today as Dr. Marín, you'd have to really know my whole story and know that's only by the grace of God and champions of people, educators like you who believed in me and said, we can do this. And then the last one is giving kids hope. You have to give kids hope that more is possible, right? And for me, kids calling me Dr. Marín is not for me to walk around with a high solidity title, but more so to tell kids that if I can get my doctorate, you can finish high school, right? And where's the unfortunate thing for so many of our kids right now is many kids go to the guidance counselor's office and the closest they will ever get to college is looking at a brochure on a table in the middle of the waiting room. So take those kids to a university, let them taste the air, let them taste the food, let them see what's possible. When you can see it, you can believe it, and then you internalize it and allow that to be your drive and your purpose. So we have to find a way to reach kids. And right now during COVID, we have to think outside the box and be unconventional because it's so hard not to do it when we're doing it through screens right now, right? And we're having to feel people's energy through screens. I'm not able to give hugs or high fives or fist bumps. That's so hard, but our kids deserve it. And if we aren't doing it, who else is doing
it? Listen, if I could cry on live YouTube session, what you just described about your own life is every single student that I service. And sometimes it's hard. You know, it's difficult not loving my students. It's difficult sometimes teaching them because I have to step away from that teacher role and I have to be more of sometimes a mommy, right? Because I have to ask questions that I know their parents are not asking them. Sometimes I have to, you know, they say teachers shouldn't be babysitters, but sometimes I feel like I am because I'm doing things that I would have never thought I'll be doing in 11 years teaching. And so sometimes I have to peel back a lot of myself that I built up over the years as a Black woman, right? That hard shell. And I have to become a little bit more softer for my students, even when I don't want to, right? Because adults, let's be honest, sometimes we don't want to do it. But I realized that when I do go that extra mile and when I do reach out, even though it's 11 o'clock at night, I'm getting responses. It may not be 100%, but even if I touch one student, it's very important. And so just listening to your story makes me think about a teacher reached out to me today because we started a new trimester. And so she now has a student who I had a couple of weeks ago. And the student wanted to thank me, but she thanked me through the teacher. And she said, because, you know, she has a son and I just kept pushing her. And I didn't know that what I was doing is going to now translate to her working hard in her other classes because she's like, well, Ms. V pushed me to get out of bed, you know? And so sometimes we don't know as educators how much our students need us. And regardless of how you may feel that morning because you didn't get your cup of coffee or because your errands is not sitting right, you have to think about how that student may have it 10 times worse than you. And so your problem is not really the same kind of problems our students are dealing with. And right now during remote instruction, I'm hearing a lot of teachers complain. And it's like, just think about if in 1980 or 1990, you were being asked to forget everything you knew about learning and to try something new. And that's exactly what our students are going through. And so I wanted to actually dig into this book where I actually read your story. And I took out a quote that stood out to me because it really made me think of my students. And you said, if you get to know me, you will learn that I am a big teddy bear and I love music and sports. And my students, when they come into my classroom, the first thing you looking at, you like, what? He just got out of Rikers, or you know, he cursed his mother out yesterday, or he didn't even say good morning to me. But then the next week he's like, oh, Miss V, well, can I get some candy? And oh no, but I didn't understand this, but you didn't text me yesterday to wake me up. And so can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me more about your story and relationships?
Absolutely. So one of my favorite speakers is Manny Scott, and one of his quotes from, or one of his books he wrote, excuse me, is even on your worst day, you could be a child's best hope, right? And that's something you were kind of speaking to just now. And so for kids, right, I said the number one word that really has fueled my career, my philosophy about education, Yaritza, is love. You have to just love on kids. That's it. That kids just want to be loved. They want to be cared about. They want to be nurtured. They want that tough love sometimes too, right? And so for me, even as my own student, you know, coming up, I had always academic, you know, challenges kind of coming up. That was my scapegoat for getting out of class. I had behaviors that came with that, and that made it hard for teachers to love me or to want to teach me, right? And so from year to year, I kind of got passed on. Again, alternative school, just I fit the mold of a Black male student who just wasn't going to be successful. And in education, you know, even right now as an administrator, we teachers create SMART goals, right? And so you got the beginning of the year, you have your SMART goal, and I'll be honest with you, what I can't stand is when a teacher turns in a SMART goal to me that says 75% of my students will do such and such, such and such, and pass. So that means we're already planning in August or September for 25% to already fail, right? So for me, as being a student, when I was going through and I was, again, the poster child for just everything that was not education, that for teachers, I fed into that 25% or that 10% that wasn't going to make it. And so there always was an excuse for, well, Basil's doing this or he's doing this, so this is okay. And I fit the mold. But what were the teachers or what were the administrators going to do outside the box to be able to reach me? And it wasn't until I had a teacher named Miss Kathy Sankson in 9th grade who cared about me, and she was able to see past, if you allow me to say this, the BS. And she was able to see oh, he's from it's some greatness inside of him, and we just kind of got to cultivate it, and we got to be able to look past the rough edges on the starfish, but we can save this one. And she loved on me. And the thing is, Yaritza, like you said, in order to be an effective a communicator or educator, you have to go beyond your contractual terms to reach kids. If you're trying to do it from 8 to 4 every day, you've already missed the mark, because kids are wanting to have that interaction with you beyond that, right? You have to know what's going on with students, internally, right? I think being a teacher now is 75% teacher, and I would say 25% you're a social worker, like you were talking about. You got to know what's going on internally, you know what's going on in the classroom, and you got to know what's going on in those hallways between classroom transitions, that things that are happening, things going on in the community, right? So Miss Sankson really took a hold of me, and one of the quotes she used to tell me was, no matter how dirty your past is, your future is always spotless. And she told me that every day. When I came back from a suspension, I came back from the principal's office because I cussed her out, whatever the case may be, she always said, let's get back to basics. And so that philosophy, after 9th grade, I got myself together, but that was a philosophy that helped me be a special ed teacher, right? It was looking past kids. When you get an IEP, a lot of times they're written as a kid is the most horrible kid ever on earth, right? And what was interesting for me as special ed teacher, you do those assessments when the kid first comes to you, and you ask them questions about its interest survey. What kind of candy do you like? What kind of shoes do you like? What do you like to do? And what I used to always do is I used to make a cheat sheet, Yaritza, of all those things the kids like. Right. And what would happen is, you see the behaviors, kids doing different things, but we take a test a couple months later and the kids are like Butterfinger. Right. And so they take a test and they might get 50 on it. But guess what? The tests they were taking before, they weren't even doing it. They're ripping it in half. Right. So now they got a 50 on it because they tried. And I come out with the Butterfinger and place it on the desk. And now, mind you, I have my cheat sheet. So I went to it, daily, and I said, all right, what is this kid like? But that kid just thought that I remembered this thing from 2 months ago. They cared that much. And it's just small things like that sometimes that you just build upon, and kids knows like, wow, you care about me and you want to help me be successful. And the kids will do things for you. Like the young lady you were talking about in your story, she had all the obstacles on why she couldn't be successful, but she said, because you believed in her, I'm going to change myself. I'm going to do better for you. And they think they're really trying to do you a favor, but in turn, down the long run, it benefits them. Right. So I've had plenty of kids that went from, straight failing classes to they passed half their classes or they passed all the classes. I have a program right now at my school called My School Sons, and it takes that level of mentorship from just, a lot of times, black and brown men will join gangs or do different things to become a part of a system where they belong. Right. And that's why they're getting into these gang things. But if you're able to create that sense of community and family in the schoolhouse, how powerful is that? And it's taken, again, the label of son. I can never replace your dad. I can never be that, but I can be the best I can be for you here at school. And you don't know how many times I got kids. I'm 6'4". I got kids who are 6'5" coming to my office, and they're coming to me with the report card like, "Oh my God, I got such good grades, and look what I'm doing." And I'm giving them little fruit snacks, and it's like, this kid's 17, but it's just that little thing that they didn't get when they were younger. Right. And so now it's just something they care about. And all of a sudden that kid to come to you and say, man, because of you now, I can maybe think about going to college. I can maybe think about going to a junior prep, but I was thinking about this 2 years ago. Right. And it's just about giving kids hope. Like, that's it. I'm creating you a system where if you want to do it, you can try, but we got to give you the skill sets and the tools to want to do that. So when I tell you, Yaritza, relationships are everything, that's the biggest thing. If you can tap into a kid's heart and say, hey, but I want better for you. I want you to be able to I want you to be a change maker in the world. I want you to get into good trouble. Kids will tap into that and say, man, like, I'll do it for you, Dr. Marín. And later down the road, they will come back and thank you, because now they're able to be a change agent for themselves. And like you said, the young lady, her trajectory for her whole family is changing now. And that's a beautiful thing.
I'll do it as well, especially if you're giving me Butterfingers. I love Butterfingers and I love Snickers. So I'm just putting it out there. But as I'm watching the time, I agreed with everything that you said. And what I would just add before we leave is that for those of you who are not in person, but wish to build relationships online, just listen to your students. We have a ton of resources, especially in the Disco library, where you could just ask students, what's your favorite song? And one day you may just want to play that real low in the background while you're doing live instruction. It's those little things that students are privy to. They know whether you like them or not, just based off of how much attention you're paying them. And it doesn't necessarily mean how many times you call on them in class. It's just those small things, playing music, or maybe in the back on your whiteboard, you're giving shout outs to students. I usually put shout outs on my stream on Google Classroom, and I shout students out. Or we use a text system called Convolve, and I'll send a text to the entire student body about just one kid. And so you have to dig deep into how you're going to build these relationships, because we're losing kids, whether you guys see it or not. Remote learning, we are losing kids, and it's at a rapid pace, and it's Black and brown students that we're losing the most. And last week I mentioned, it's not an achievement gap, it is an access gap. And so I love that Dr. Moran touched on, you know, teachers giving students a sense of hope, because we are a part of that access. We are a resource. So whether you want to see yourself as a part of the system or not, you actually are. So with that being said, Dr. Moran, I would like to thank you for joining me today for episode 11.
Thank you so much. And keep doing the work you're doing. You're making incredible impact. Again, your followers, people are listening to you, understanding that it takes all of us, no matter what your role is, it takes all of us. And again, teachers, counselors, administrators can be gatekeepers. The word you used was access. So making sure all kids have what they need for equitable education is impactful. There's so many other Yaritzas and Basils out here to get in the world. We got to just tap into that natural talent, tap into that yearning and purpose, and let them know that greater is possible if you give more.
Oh, greater is definitely possible. Thank you so much, Dr. Moran. And thank you guys for joining us today.
Yes.
Bye.